All right. Hello, Dr. Berci.
Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to see you. I am just thrilled to be here with you today. I'm very happy. It's so nice to see you again. But before I get started, I would like to just thank you for your willingness to participate in the Society of Airway Management, or SAM, our Airway Legacy series. And it is designed to honor airway legends in airway management, which Sam certainly considers you to be a pioneer in advances that have been made in this specialty. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started by just sharing with the audience, a brief bio about you. I know you very well as a lot of people do, but nonetheless, for the purpose of this series, I'd like to just say a few words up front. So for the audience, I'm going to go ahead and get started, but the first 50 years of Dr. George Berci's life really do warrant a book every 10 years. Dr. Berci was born in Hungary in 1921. His family immigrated to Vienna, where he studied music and violin in 1924. They returned to Hungary in the late 30s when things got a little bit uncomfortable for the Jews in Austria. He relearned Hungarian, graduated from high school, and studied 3 years of mechanical engineering. And in 1942, Hungarian Nazis took off to the labor camp where he toiled and suffered for more than 2 years. Near the end of the war, Dr. Berci escaped a Nazi march toward Auschwitz, returned behind German lines to Budapest, found his mother, and joined the underground, where he used his German language skills to save many still in the ghetto. As the war ravaged on communist-controlled Hungary, he went to medical school. He did his surgical residency, and he was actually arrested for confronting the Communist Party. He wrote his first research papers and escaped during the 1956 Hungarian Revolution to Melbourne, Australia. In Vienna, he was awarded a Rockefeller Fellowship in Surgery, and after working years in a lab, finally became a reader or associate professor of surgery in the Department of Surgery at the University of Melbourne under Professor Ewing. Dr. Berci performed a 1-year fellowship at the University of Seattle, and in 1980, he then accepted the position of the Director of Surgical Endoscopy and Surgical Research at Cedars of Lebanon Hospital, and later CSMC under the chairmanship and mentorship of the great Leon Morgenstern. He was named clinical professor of surgery at UCLA and later at USC, where he said that he thought the world emeritus looked a lot like dead. Really, George always has a sense of humor. But there are not enough papers in the program for his accomplishments, but it is not an exaggeration to say that in his 70-year career, he has changed the face of surgery and anesthesiology. Among his first 24 major awards are the Glitzel Prize in Austria, from Austria. SAGES named their Lifetime Achievement Award for him. The American College of Surgeons gave him their prestigious Jacobson Innovation Award. Karl Storr's Endoscopy endowed a chair of surgery in his honor. He was given an honorary PhD in Hungary, Dr. Honoris Cause Sumos University, Hungary. And in 2017, Cedars-Sinai Medical Center gave him their first lifetime, or I don't know if it was their first, but it was their Lifetime Achievement Award. Dr. Berci has delivered hundreds of lectures nationally in more than 20 countries. He has published 12 books, 61 chapters, and produced 238 publications in peer-reviewed journals, and he still works full-time teaching and performing clinical research. I would say his major medical and scientific contributions include the fact that he brought the Hopkins optical system to endoscopy, allowing a clearer image and enabling clinical acceptance. He brought the xenon light to endoscopy 4 decades ago, which is still used. He developed the first miniature video camera in endoscopy, which allowed improved vision and documentation. He developed endoscopic instruments and procedures in urology, such as TURP, gynecology, general and thoracic surgery, operative laryngology, office laryngology, and pediatric surgery, whereas miniature endoscopes allowed endoscopic surgery in children. All of these accomplishments were based on the principles of endoscopic surgery, resulting in less pain, shorter hospitalization, and faster return of the daily activities, something that is just common these days. His leadership of training the trainers through SAGES in the early 1990s enabled surgeons all over the United States to become safe and proficient in emerging laparoscopy. He personally proctored more than 500 surgeons. In the year 2000, he invented a video intubation scope, which improved the complications of the difficult anatomy in the adult and pediatric patients, as well as revolutionized clinical and teaching anesthesia. His invention of the VITO, the surgical video microscope, a few years ago, enabled surgeons to generally use microscopes with small viewers to operate with a team from a screen. I have to say, Dr. Berci, or George, I fondly call him, sees a problem and he figures how to fix it. That's who he is. And after a recent minimally invasive heart valve procedure himself, the first thing he said in post-op was, you know, we could have put a miniature camera on the end of that catheter so you don't have to go in there blind. So George, I mean, it is such an honor and a privilege for me to be here with you today and for you to serve in the inaugural role as our first member of the Legacy series. And I am just delighted that I'm the one here to interview you. So why don't we go ahead and get started? I'd like to start out with a question, just a broad question. What was your motivation to start studying airway management?
Well, the question was, originally I came from a musician's family, and everything in my early and late education was classical music. And the question is, I couldn't restart it because when I was deliberated, the academy was closed. To cut the story short, I ended up in medicine. I had a very interesting time going through certain political changes, which were not easy. I learned the lesson, don't criticize too much, because it ended up in different place, etc. But the major issue was a great help that I did 3 years of mechanical engineering. Therefore, when I was involved in biliary surgery, and I saw the first endoscope, the Nietzsche from 1875, I tried to use it in our area of biliary surgery, but it wasn't very well designed, despite the fact that urologists used the time because there was nothing else to employ. Again, I was also very fortunate that I went to London and I met Hopkins, and he showed me, and I had some background, a magnificent new optical system, which has a higher resolution, better light transmission, etc. And my coin dropped that here is something what surgeons, including anesthesiology, I heard about later on Macintosh, but my coin didn't drop in time. Therefore, the next step was with a better optical system and the video, which the miniature camera I developed in 1962, that I looked for somebody who is interested in it. And I found a little company in Germany whom I handled over. And it was very important that urology got a new tool where they could do a prostatectomy in millions of patients without opening a patient. And endoscopy was slowly developed. Unfortunately, I had a little problem with anesthesia because my colleagues didn't believe that we can improve, but we did it. We had a better imaging system. We had a display system for binocular view. We had a system with higher resolution. We were able to record. It changed surgery. And wherever we go, including anesthesia, today improvements are used as an everyday procedure. In a very short time, I'm very happy and very proud, and I'm very lucky that I met you, because I had extreme difficulties in the 2000s to sell the ID, but you got it and you helped. And this is the reason why today anesthesiology is simpler, safer, better to teach, and in pediatric you have another new area.
Oh, it was just such a delight to have met you, George. I'm just, like I said, honored. And look at you still working away and you're sitting in your office. Do you go into work every day, George, into your office?
Not every day. I have to admit I cut back, but a couple of times per week. And we're working, of course, at the moment, we published a book. I worked on the book 18 years. And because I found a guy in Germany in 1900 who published 2,000 cholecystectomies.
Wow.
People don't know it. And our great guys, Mayo and Hallstatt, went to Berlin to know and to learn biliary surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I met the Macintosh system, and people were very happy with a little light on the end.
Yeah.
But today it's a little bit different to see the entire anatomy. And when there are certain difficulties, it's easy to maneuver, to change to a different tube, to change to a different position. And we have less complications in intubation today than we had 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Therefore, I'm very happy that you and your folks helped, and various meetings, and of course, large number of publications which improve the procedure, not speaking from complications. And I'm very happy to sit here and talk to you.
Oh, I'm
It's a great
thrilled.
honor.
I'm thrilled. I know you're very interested in having safer practice for us, by us, and the ability for the CMAC, as you've mentioned, does provide great imaging, recording capacity. It really has been a game changer for teaching airway management. And there are other video laryngoscopes that can do the same. Could you tell me a little more specifics as to the history of the CMAC? Because I think that's important, how it's evolved. What it is today is not what it was when it first came out. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how it has evolved, how it started initially, and then how it has evolved to its current state.
Well, the CMAC has certain parts. One is the camera, and the camera at 30, 40 years ago was a little bit large. today is smaller. The next step was in the CMAC aspect in the camera, the so-called resolution, the lines per hour, and this went significantly up. And this followed with illumination. No? We changed from a small intensifier to the modern one, where a little bit the heat is less, which is very important. But the first question was the camera. And the camera underwent many changes again. Major issue was resolution, size, and illumination, the heat production. And then the next step was the reception system, how we displayed it. If you look in the video screens, the resolution significantly changed in the last 20 years. The other aspect is that today you can transfer images without the wire system to somewhere else. But the TV system itself, the amplifier, they were changed according to the camera system. And with the new electronic system, we have today a vastly improved system. And the question is, of course, that perhaps in a couple of years, the camera will be so small that the camera will be on the tip as a complete system, and you don't have anything. While you have remote control of the camera and the light. Therefore, I think we started something. It goes on. There are many improvements all around the world, but there's no question that if you're looking the most important duty of ours, which is patient's care, we made significant changes in complications, in mortality, in pediatric aspects, in thoracic, in lung situation. In other words, we were able to help to create new areas, and people who are young and have better memory, adding to this one for the future.
Thank you, George. I was curious, and I know I've never asked you this, but I know when the flexible scope and the initial prototypes that were developed, it's almost like the flexible scope tip was part of the laryngoscope. It has so evolved in design. But why the choice of working with a Macintosh blade and not a Miller blade?
Well, this is up to the anesthesiologist because the system is here. And the question is, how can you miniaturize the imaging system on the tip of your Macintosh? That you're keeping the Macintosh because it's already since 1950, since Macintosh. Yeah, there is many ways to improve, and I hope that people who are interested to spend time in improvement, and not only in patient's care. We need more research, and we need more help. But yeah, we are facing an area where we can go in high resolution to 2 millimeter diameter, which is already pretty small.
Well, I know what the nice thing with the video laryngoscopy with the traditional shaped Macintosh blade, it really does enhance the view, the ability to see around the corner. And I know the straight blade, you kind of see what you see there with a straight blade, but it does giving the video opportunity to a straight blade, a straight laryngoscope blade. It does give you the ability for others to see what you see. Because I know it's so important for teaching, for us to be able to see what the intubator sees when they look for teaching. Because a lot of times I'll say, what do you see? And the trainee would say, well, I see pink. And I'm like, well, pink. Well, at least it's not red. But it's hard to guide someone when you really can't see what they see. So I
That,
think, right, for teaching purposes, it has been phenomenal. Um,
it would be interesting, this is your area, to develop one where you have a micro arrow, which the assistant, the trainer can use to have an arrow which you can go to this side. Don't you see this one? That you can direct the movements in the system, in the style. This would be, I think, another area which would be tremendously helpful in anesthesia for the teacher to be able, a mini arrow from his area, what he saw on TV, it shows what you should do. Therefore, there are, well, I think myself, I'm still thinking what can be done, but it's to the next generation, I did the basic work. Therefore, you have plenty of area where you can improve the system.
No, no doubt about it. I know you're so interested in patient safety and teaching the non-anesthesiologists how to improve safety and airway management outside of the operating room, particularly teaching non-surgical airway management in the ICU. I know in the operating room, most intubations are performed under elective controlled conditions by anesthesiologists experienced in airway management. But on the other hand, tracheal intubation in the intensive care unit is often associated with a higher rate of immediate or life-threatening complications, related to hemodynamic alterations and difficulty with oxygenation. But I think what you've done for us is you've really tried to merge the two worlds in the surgical space and the anesthesiologist space, because airway management is a critical core skill for surgeons and anesthesiologists, and we need cooperation from both surgery and anesthesiology, in organizing teaching courses for both specialties, so we can really help eliminate complications. And of course, by doing that, we even reduce the cost of healthcare. So there's a lot of great reasons for us to be moving in this direction. But I'm gonna go back a little bit. I want to know, George, who have been your connections? Like which anesthesiologist? I know you had mentioned my name in serving connections and working with you with airway management. Could you tell me your other connections in terms of airway management?
Well, sure. I had Marshall Kaplan. I had Ward from the East. Of course, as soon as we met you, you took over because you know everybody, and your past is better if you say something than anybody else. But there are many areas, what you mentioned. One is emergency, for instance, non-anesthesiologists on the emergency car are trained with a better approach, a better honesty. I recently saw a couple of problems. I'm living in a place where I saw more emergency. This is another area where you can really produce. You have the bags, you can decrease the size is crucial, and the simplicity of the system is another area we need a lot of research.
I know you mentioned Marshall Kaplan, and he's been an integral part of SAM for years. So much experience, and he has helped with many projects and research, clinical research with video laryngoscopy. And you also mentioned Denham Ward on the East Coast, and he was also very instrumental in really starting this up, using the store's video laryngoscope and, you know, taking it to next steps. You also had worked with Steve Kantz. Could you talk a little bit about Steve, George?
Yeah. Steve Gans was a pediatric surgeon. We're talking about 1970, 1971. And pediatric surgeons did quite a bit of bronchoscopy. The intubation, they left it to anesthesiologists, but they had problems. And when I was able to work with him, he was very nice and he was very positive. In the majority of my life, when I brought some new ideas or systems, I found sometimes a tremendous resistance. I never had this problem, I don't need it, blah, blah. But Steve Gans helped, he really helped to decrease the diameter of the telescope from 5 to 3. This was an enormous advantage in pediatrics. And I tell you, for instance, that he had a bronchoscope developed, then intubation, a miniature one. Another big area which helped was urology. Pediatric cysto didn't exist without opening. In other words, the miniaturization opened up more areas, the miniaturization but more safety aspect, less complications, and less cases where you have to explore. Therefore, he did it. He wrote a magnificent book in 1972, a monograph about endoscopy in pediatrics. And he really opened up this area. He was a very marvelous, and as a human being, he was a nice man.
No, he's a good man. George, what would you say when you look back on the evolution of the Macintosh, the CMAC? What would you say some of your biggest hurdles were? What were some obstacles that came up during its development that you had to overcome?
Well, it's a great generosity, owing to the fact that I had many directions. For instance, abdominal surgery, a part of anesthesiology. The problem was always the same, and this was education. I met people who do the procedure for 10 or 20 years. The core didn't drop. Why should I change? And in other words, again, the mentality or the philosophy of the person who performs medicine is crucial to accept something new. And even if it accepts with certain criticism, but the most important is not to throw it back. I did it for 20 years. I didn't have any problems, right? This is what we have to help in the future, in the younger generation, to implant some philosophy or possibility to be more optimistic, Otherwise, we don't have progress.
Yeah, you have to have the people who want to change and think it's going to be better. But you definitely have made us change, George. And I mean, your influence has been remarkable. And we are ever so grateful for taking your work from surgery into our world and allowing us to progress and go to next steps with these devices. It has definitely evolved, but I would love if you would share with the audience, George, an interesting airway story or an interesting airway case that you could talk to us about.
Well, I will do. No question, I will talk to you because we know to whom we can talk. But Yeah, and you were extremely helpful. And it's not me. If you, with your organization, with your thoughts, with your visit, uh, and we had a couple of occasions together, and you made our hope in a larger magnitude because you know that people know you how to train people. First of all, don't forget, I'm not an anesthesiologist. The guy asked me, who in the hell are you? What are you doing in anesthesia? You know? It was very difficult, not easy. No question Marshall helped, no question Warden, the other people, but it took time.
Mhm.
We have developed the Hopkins system in the 60s,
Mhm.
and it took us 20 years,
Mhm.
despite the fact that we have units. We thought on this, looking into the throat. How can we see better?
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
But again, you have your group and you help, and there's no question that without your help, have a look at your book with 1,600 pages, okay? All right? This wouldn't happen. Therefore, I'm very happy and thankful, all
Oh,
right, that I'm
oh,
here.
you give me far too much
Yeah.
credit.
I just was told to look in the camera. My face is of no interest.
Well, I have a few more questions for you, George,
Yes, ma'am.
before we wrap up. Can you share with us your vision for the future of airway management?
Of what?
Of the
Of
future.
future.
Yeah, for the future. What do you what do you see
Um,
down the road? A year, 5 years, or even further?
well, I spent some time in the Mayo Clinic, and there are a couple of others. We have one here, the Kaiser system.
Mm.
Therefore, if you ask for philosophy, this perhaps another way for the future, all right? If you're talking about future at all.
Yes.
At the moment, we are in a very, very difficult situation. The whole world,
Mhm.
what will happen in the next 5 years, next 10 years? Because to every development, you need financial help,
Mhm.
you need organization, you need people, you have to pay people to
Mhm.
spend time. You need time and economy. And this is in the future, in nowadays situation, where we have these problems with finances,
Mhm.
where if you're looking our budget, then the number one is military, number two is health. How we can in the future keep eye what can be or should be improved, where should we put more
Mhm.
money in to save the patient? How can we improve the various huge problems that patients should be insured somehow? And what does it cost?
Mhm.
Therefore, we need people in the future who analyzing big improvement in this area. What I mentioned, nothing new. Everybody know this, but this needs to be improvement to improve research.
Mhm. Yep. So more work to be done. That's for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, we're
yeah,
not at the zero episodes
yeah,
of problems with airway management. That is for sure. But the Society for Airway Management is so focused on patient safety and moving the needle on when an invention comes up, and how we
yeah,
as a group collectively, not just
yeah,
me, how we all get out there and teach and train and spread the word of what are the newer devices, the newer technology, and then not only what they are, but how to use them. So it's a team effort for sure, George. And we're, as I mentioned before, we're just so happy that you helped us in this area, and we're ever so grateful. But I do have one last question for you. And that is, what advice would you give a young anesthesiologist studying airway management?
Perhaps to use another specialty. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Well, it is the first of all, if somebody goes in surgery, the most important is the mentality, what is way of thinking. If he was brought up as a young person who has certain sidelines where he can't look to right or left, it's difficult.
Mhm.
People have to realize that we're living in a new area. When I started was different, what they are starting is different. Therefore, the aim to learn something, to direct themselves, is dependent from their mentality. All right? Because doesn't make a difference with a surgeon or anesthesiologist. There are pros and cons. But the major issue is how can we help today in a critical situation of the whole world, but here in the States, where we will have problems in the next 5 years, all right? How he can fit in the financial aspect, in his mentality. That's crucial.
Mhm. Mhm.
Sorry, it was complex, but you know what I meant.
I know exactly. Yes. Thank you, George. Well, George, we are at time. It has just been an honor and a privilege to spend this time with you and learn more about your contributions to airway management and how they began. On behalf of SAM, I would like to thank you for serving as our inaugural guest of honor for our SAM Airway Legacy Series. I'd also like to thank the SAM Communication Committee under Daniel Perrin for they have contributed to some of the questions that I've asked. And they've done a lot of work and will continue to be doing a lot of work in getting these series going. So I don't know, George, if there's anything you would like to add before I close the session.
Yeah, there is no question. Not because you are sitting on the other side of the TV, but if you go back in the evolution of video microscopy, you were one of few who immediately dropped the coin and helped us.
Mm-hmm.
Believe me, we contacting many people, but you were our hope, and there's nothing, because you're sitting there, it was crucial to help from anesthesiology point of view, help, and you did it. Therefore, that sitting here in microphone is not only me, not because but you recognize the future and you help. You know, we had enormous problems in the profession, politically, otherwise, and we thank you for your help.
Oh, George, how kind. Oh, thank you for your words. But again, it takes a village, and that Society for Airway Management has been, my partner, and I've just been thrilled to be a part of this group of airway enthusiasts, and we keep growing and learning together. So together we spread the word of safer airway management. So I can't thank you enough, George. It has been a pleasure. So I think we will then conclude the session. I want to thank our audience for listening. And right now it's just before Thanksgiving for us. So I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving for those who celebrate, and wish you all the best the holiday season and in the coming year. So thank you again, George.
Thank you for your help.